Click subscribe to get daily Manchester United content from Passionate Reds, only on All for United. It's been a little while since we've done one of these. Welcome along to All for United. I'm Ben. Hit that subscribe button. 250 subscribers now away from 5k, and we'd love to get there quickly. So share this link, hit a like on the video, get in the comments, support the community that we've got over here, because we try our very best to bring you great balanced content and also insight when we can provide it as well. Like today, this is a special player insight show. We're now, a week into 5 days into the January transfer window. These rumours have been going around for a little while. There's a young striker in Argentina named Julian Alvarez. He's 21 years old, and he has been setting South America on fire this season with his goals. And I tell you what, when I watch his compilation, he is just a reincarnation of Messi and Carlos Tevez put together. So I am absolutely buzzing that this player is linked with Manchester United, as should all good young players be. Thankfully, though, I can't bring you the good insight into him because I don't watch much apart from the compilations, but Tom Robinson does. Tom Robinson's a South American and Argentine football writer. He writes for the likes of World Football Index and also Golazo. You've also recently, Tom, helped put some South American players in the top 100 list as well. Did you say for the Guardian? Was it for the Guardian?
Yeah.
Or was it the Guardian?
Yeah, no, it was for the Guardian. First of all, thanks for having me on the show. It's great to discuss South American football, and lucky enough to be part of that group. And Julian Alvarez was actually the one South American based player who made it into the top 100, which is, it's not a regular occurrence. So he's obviously doing something right.
And we'll find out why he made that list as well and what he's doing right throughout this show. But I want to start at the very beginning with him. We know he's a young lad. We know he's set the Argentinian league on fire this year, guiding River Plate to another domestic title. But just give us a little background on him. Tell us a little bit more about Alvarez. Why has he caught the eye of Europeans' biggest clubs?
Yeah, so he's been a player who's been on the radar for quite a long time. Famously, he had trials with Real Madrid when he was I think 11-year-old player. Couldn't make that move because of some rules and restrictions. But yeah, he's been someone who's come through River Plate's famed academy. He made his debut back in 2018, and as an 18-year-old, and straight away, if you're making your debut for one of the biggest clubs on the continent, that you're something a little bit special. And I think the thing that really, really set him out and made him someone to take notice of was the fact that in his fourth professional or senior appearance, he was brought on as a sub in the Copa Libertadores final between River and Boca, which is, Champions League final. It's like Manchester United versus Liverpool, biggest game in their history. And the fact that he was trusted in only his fourth appearance to come on and contribute and look at home was a huge feather in his cap. He then was played a little bit out of position on the right wing, kind of a support striker, didn't get loads of game time. And we were all kind of asking, this kid's clearly got talent, but is he going to feature? Is he going to kick on like we expected to? And 2021 has been that year where he's lived up to the hype and some, and he's just been voted South American Player of the Year, which for a 21-year-old is pretty rare. Players like Neymar have won that award, but it usually kind of goes to returning veterans or players who've been around for a while. So he's had a fantastic year, and he's looking like, for me, definitely the best striking prospect to come out of Argentina since Lautaro Martinez, and one of the most someone who's going to be a big player in the national team for years to come.
Yeah, of course. Sorry, I forgot to have my microphone on mute there. And also with that, coming out of Argentinian football, which is sort of on fire at the moment after obviously the big win, Messi finally getting his trophy. I think a lot of people are looking at some of Argentina's hottest property or young players, so to speak, to really help take the team to that next step in the future. So how important is it for clubs like River Plate, Boca Juniors to keep breeding these young players? And in terms of Alvarez, what are the people on the ground? What are fans of Argentinian football saying about him? Because it's easy for us to look at some compilations and look at his goal scoring record and go, look, this kid looks good. But what are actually fans of River Plate saying? Would they be gutted to see him go this summer?
Well, the thing is, when it comes to player sales, it's just become a reality and a necessary economic must for pretty much all the clubs in Argentina. They don't have as much money as they used to, and the only way that they can kind of keep financing themselves is through selling players. Obviously, they'd like to see them stick around a little bit longer. No one wants to see their best players go, but they're fully aware that if they can get someone who's going to meet the release clause of about 20 million euros, that is a huge amount of money for Argentinian football right now, and that can help completely renovate the squad. That's going to, it's not just the football clubs the football clubs is kind of social institutions that also fund loads of different other sports. So you'll have a River Plate basketball team, a River Plate hockey team, all these kind of different things. So it goes so far beyond just what's good for the club. I mean, the good thing is River have really kind of created a dynasty under Marcelo Gallardo, who's kind of like the Argentinian Ferguson in many ways. He's been there for 7 years, which, most managers probably only get about 7 months. So it just shows what a great job he's done. He's obviously a name that a lot of people will remember and certainly have known about for exploits. He's won countless trophies, and he's been so good at kind of establishing that River DNA, bringing young players through. We've seen lots of other players come through in recent years. Someone like Ezequiel Palacios, who went to Bayer Leverkusen for about 15 million. He's part of the Argentina setup, just like Julian Alvarez, obviously part of that Copa America winning squad that ended the 28-year drought. So yeah, people in Argentina absolutely love Alvarez. They think he's someone who's going to be one of their next big strikers. Higuain has sort of said, yeah, I see a lot of similarities between us. He's just an all-round striker, and he's someone who's rightly being linked with elite clubs such as Man United and obviously pretty much everyone else you can think of at the moment.
Is Higuain that player that you would compare Alvarez to? Having watched him, who would you compare him to? Because for me, I think it's interesting that you said he comes off the right-hand side a little bit and he has played out there at United. From our perspective, I feel like we've ruined a couple of strikers by playing them out wide too often. The likes of Marcus Rashford, who was a prolific goal scorer at a young age, coming through the ranks, then to be put out on the wings. And I think it's totally mashed up and messed up his complete rawness and what was exciting about him when he first came onto the scene. Maybe a little bit similar. We're now seeing those signs with Greenwood. He was a prolific number 9, pushed out wide. Don't get me wrong, he's still got that potential to come back inside as a centre forward. But how long do you play a striker as a winger before going, right, now's your time, play as a 9? Do you see him now as a striker, and whatever club he goes to next, he's going to have to be their number 9 to progress? And who do you compare him to? Sorry, that was the original question as well.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think he's definitely someone who should play through the middle now. I mean, he's got that versatility that he can play in a front three just off. He can play as a support striker. He's played as on the right wing, as you mentioned there before. But the fact that since about halfway through this year, he got moved to the centre forward role for River Plate, and then hit 18 goals and 6 assists in 20, I think it was only just 21 appearances. It just showed that, yeah, he's born to play through the middle. And yeah, he's okay. He's not someone who's lightning quick, like he's not got Mbappe pace or Haaland physicality. He's someone who's very good at kind of everything. He's great intelligence. He's got great movement. Right now, he's just riding the crest of a wave of confidence, and it feels like everything he touches ends up in the back of the net. He's a really big game player as well. Obviously at that early start in the Libertadores final, but also he's hit a brace against Boca Juniors, their big rivals, one of which was like a dipping 25-yard shot. The other was like a towering at the back post. He's hit hat tricks against San Lorenzo, one of the big clubs in Argentina, 4 goals against Patronato. He's kind of got a bit of everything, and he just finds those pockets of space, just kind of in the half spaces between the centre back and the full back, and he's sort of clinical off both feet. I mean, I think Higuain is probably someone who we look at, especially later in his career, and see him as a bit more physical, a bit more of a classic target man, powerful centre forward. I think Alvarez is a bit more subtle, a bit classier. It's hard to compare him to anyone really, because your typical thoughts of an Argentinian striker or forward are these kind of low center of gravity, guys who are, quick, explosive, like, Tevez, Messi, Agüero, all these kind of guys who kind of forged in those, what they call the potreros in Argentina, kind of like the dust bowls of Argentina, where you've got, terrible conditions and you're just getting through all these kind of bumpy grounds and big challenges. Alvarez feels way more like he's a European style, a modern style. I mean, I was thinking about this last night actually, and there's kind of similarities with Robin van Persie, I think, in terms of someone who's, he's tall, he's elegant, but he's not all about his height or all about his physicality. He's good off both feet. He's just got that striker's instinct and that intelligence. So, I mean, if I was going to compare him to anyone, especially who's played for United before, then I think Van Persie is kind of quite a good comparison.
I think it's quite interesting, the Van Persie comparison, because I think when he came to United, obviously, is that towards the end of his career, he had a couple of serious knee injuries. People forget that little bit of flair that he had before, like in his early 20s, mid 20s, and he was a player that could beat a centre back for pace. He was a player, that had that bit of flair about him, and then he moulded his game towards the end of his career a little bit, I suppose, like you could say Cristiano Ronaldo. I mean, all good strikers do that. I've always said that there's something wrong with a striker. When because the last thing they're meant to lose is their striking instinct. So I've always said this now about Aubameyang. I know everything's come out since, but the fact that Aubameyang's not just lost his legs, but lost his striking instinct at Arsenal, it says a little bit more about him than it does some of the other strikers in world football. For instance, Michael Owen had all of those injuries, but you put him in a good situation, he's going to score you a goal because he's got that striker's instinct and he knows where to find the space. Shearer the same, Van Persie the same, Cavani's doing it now. I still think Lacazette does it time to time. And obviously you've then got the likes of, as you said, Higuain, Benzema, again, a very underrated striker who knows how to do that. So I think the Van Persie comparison is probably right from what I've seen, and I think spot on. I suppose the other question I've got for you is, he is 21 years old, is obviously in the Argentinian league, but we've got some great 21 and younger strikers coming up through the European ranks. You've got Haaland, you've got Vlahovic at Fiorentina, you've got Greenwood, obviously, still within that mix. You've got three players there that are tipped to be maybe the three, and then maybe Mbappe, you can throw in that hat, four, to go on and dominate world football from a goals and so to speak, an individual perspective over the next decade. Does Alvarez come into that conversation yet for you? Is he someone that should be kept an eye on when it comes to young strikers and getting in that mix?
Yeah, I mean, definitely he's got to be in the conversation. If you just look at his numbers, I think it's 43 goals and assists in this calendar year. Certainly, there's not many players under the age of 21 who are putting those numbers. I think, Haaland and Mbappe are kind of freaks, really, when it comes to that kind of thing. But in terms of other under 21 strikers, he's right up there with, best numbers in the world. So I think he's got to be in the conversation. Obviously, he's not been tried and tested at European level yet, which ultimately is going to be one of the things that makes or breaks if he's considered in that sort of new cohort of the best striker in the world. But certainly from an Argentinian perspective, they're looking at him, they're looking at Lautaro Martinez as the kind of two young strikers to come through and take the mantle, what with Agüero's retirement, obviously Higuain's, not part of the national team anymore. So Argentina always produces great strikers, and if you're one of the two or three best strikers in that country, then yeah, you're going to be special. I mean, I am fascinated to know from your perspective exactly whether you think, obviously with the likes of Greenwood and obviously Cristiano and Cavani, Rashford, even players like Sancho, where does he fit in? Because I feel like he needs to go to a club where he's going to play. And that would be my one worry. Like, yes, he's a bargain at 20 million in my eyes. But if he's just going to sit on the bench, then, that's not going to help anyone.
Well, he's a young striker. Let's not forget that. And he's a gem in world football by the looks of things. And from everything you've told us right now, that's clear. I think in terms of where does he fit in right now? I mean, I don't know. That's completely different to where he potentially fits in come the summer. And what I mean by that is that if you have got a young striker like Alvarez working alongside Pochettino, who knows how to get the best out of young strikers, it's a mouth-watering perspective, a lot more mouth-watering than, so to speak, someone like Pochettino working with Cristiano Ronaldo or Edinson Cavani. So I think for me, if you're bringing in someone like Alvarez, then Rashford needs to be worked on as a winger, and we dispel this myth that he's ever going to be a striker now moving forward. I think then you've got Mason Greenwood. I think without a doubt, Anthony Martial and Edinson Cavani won't be Manchester United players come the end of summer. I mean, maybe even come the end of January, if you remember, if you take note of some of the rumours. So Alvarez is very much someone who's going to be brought in with the future in mind, especially if maybe we're playing a Ralph Rangnick system where there's space for two strikers in the side. The one thing that I don't want to see us do is buy Alvarez and push him out wide. We're buying a striker. Let's play him as a striker, and let's give him game time. I mean, Ollie, I thought managed. Blimey, his head's just gone completely out
Greenwood?
of. No, not Greenwood. We bought him from Atalanta. What's his name's gone completely out of my head.
Yeah, mine too, actually.
Adama, is it? It's
yeah.
It's the young. Oh my goodness! Why is his name gone completely out of my head? God, what's his name? He's Traore, but what's his first?
Traore.
His first. I think you know what I mean. Anyway, but yeah. So he's for me, like he actually dealt with him really, really well. And I thought that I thought that when he was coming in off the bench and he was playing well, and I thought that the way he was coming in and getting games here and there was actually really, really, really good. But the issue is that he's now had this injury. He hasn't gone out on loan, and it's really, really screwed up his game time this season, because he should have had more game time than he actually has. Oh, this is really bugging me now. Ahmad. All I had in my head was Adama. And I don't know why I couldn't get Amad Diallo, not Traore. Amad Diallo.
Of course.
His full-name was Traore, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But yeah, Amad Diallo. You can tell we've had a festive period, and he hasn't played many games.
New Year's still kicking in there.
Exactly that. But again, you've got an actual winger there. So I think if we're buying Alvarez, I think there's the opportunity that he's a bigger player come the end of next summer than he is right now. And also, what's going to happen with Ronaldo? You know, in this situation, does Ronaldo stick it out at United for another year, or does he go and have a few years in the MLS, get a load of goals, break records out there, and retires very, very happy? So it could be a shrewd bit of business from United. But like you, I worry what he does between now and the summer. And I suppose I just want to hit on something you said about Martinez and Alvarez. So I think they're two young Argentinian forwards that we can sort of bounce off each other. So looking at them both now where they're at, obviously Martinez is getting a lot of game time at Inter Milan. Alvarez just come through, had a lightning season. Is it 25 goals in 30 matches or something along those lines? When it comes to potential, I feel like Martinez is getting into his stride, but Alvarez still has a way to go. So out of those two, do you think they're the generation now that are going to be sort of competing for that top dog place in the Argentinian squad, especially with Messi, obviously, at the latter stages?
Yeah, no, I think that, you know, Lautaro's a few years older now, so he's got that experience. I think there's still more to come from him, because when you're watching Argentinian football, you see lots of young players coming through, lots of exciting talents, but it's very few when you see those players who've got clearly like elite level talent and just ceilings that are through the roof. Lautaro is one of those. You could see it in terms of like mentality. He's an absolute monster. Like, he was never happy. He was always looking for more goals. And I think he's probably got a few more kind of physical traits that Alvarez maybe doesn't have. I think Alvarez has got that technique, that intelligence, that kind of clinical finishing that's definitely now looks like he's on a par, could even be better than Lautaro Martinez. That, you know, if you'd asked me a year ago, I would have said, yeah, this is a guy who's clearly very good and is going to play for a top European club. I didn't think a year ago that he'd necessarily, you know, 12 months down the line be looking at Man United or one of the top clubs in Europe. So it's an interesting one, because on one hand you think, yeah, should he maybe go to a Sevilla or a Dortmund or Fiorentina kind of level club where he can still be like a big fish in it, you know, in a mid-sized to high level pond, or does he come in, learn from Ronaldo, learn from all the greats at United, and sort of be the next anointed striker who's going to be managed cleverly to come through and in 1-2 years time be that main guy who's looking like the next Aguero or something like that in the Premier League. So it's really interesting. It's going to be a fascinating step in his career. I think he's got all the traits to do it. I've said that big game mentality, those things you can't really teach, like game intelligence and just knowing where to be in the right moments. And I think he's got everything there. He can improve so much more, and he's already doing it at such a high level. So I think he's clearly going to be one of the key guys for Argentina going forward. I mean, it's going to be, again, I think with Messi, when he finally does retire, I think you're going to see players like maybe Dybala come back into the national team setup and have a bigger role. He's always struggled to fit in alongside Messi, but in terms of striking talents, Alvarez and Martinez are going to be the two, and then you've always got a bevy of young, diminutive attacking midfielders coming through who are looking promising. There's a really good generation of 18, 19, 20-year-olds who Pablo Aimar has been coaching for the under-17s, now the under-20s, who are looking really, really good as well. So I think after a few years where there maybe weren't quite as many Argentinian strikers coming through, we're about to get like another explosion of good talents.
They've got goals in their ranks, that's for sure. I've got a few more questions for you on that, on Alvarez and the level he's playing at and where he's potentially going. Then we'll get onto the potential rumours that are online and where his next move might be and where you'd favour him to go, because it'd be interesting to hear from you on that. It's actually interesting. You mentioned Robin van Persie earlier, and then you were talking a bit about his demeanour and knowing where to be and not just having a tap in his locker, but also a wonder goal in his locker. Very much reminds me on that aspect of Harry Kane, but with a lot more agility. It looks like when the ball leaves his foot, it's going on target 9 times out of 10. And I think that's what's exciting about him. I remember seeing, was it the goal against Boca Juniors? Which was an incredible goal. But then also I was watching it and wondering, you don't do that in the Premier League though, do you? The keeper probably saves that or you get closed down. So on that, what is the level like at the moment in Argentinian football? What level is he playing at? How would you best sum up the opposition and the teams that he is playing against week in, week out?
Yeah, so the level isn't great. I think, if you're watching Argentinian football, it's as much for the young players and the returning legends and the amazing, amazing fans in the stadium. You're not necessarily there for the highest quality of football, but River have been playing head and shoulders above anyone else. They've got a very kind of free-flowing, attacking sort of set up. It's kind of a bit Ajax-y, I suppose, would be one sort of comparison to the way they're trying to play. They've always been a side that likes to score lots of goals, play nice football, whereas their rivals Boca are more about getting the results. So that's the kind of, to break it down in very simple terms, the kind of dynamic that you get. They've romped home with the league. They've been regulars in the Copa Libertadores final, so the equivalent of the Champions League. They've won 2 recently, and they've got to semi-finals. They've got to finals. So they're one of the best teams in the continent. He's obviously not up against always the highest level of defenders. So that's going to be a really interesting thing to see. Is if he was to move up to the Premier League, it's such a jump up in terms of intensity, in terms of the space and time you get. He's someone who I think I wouldn't necessarily expect him to make an instant impact, because he's not maybe got those physical attributes, means that he can just sprint away from someone or really outmuscle players. He's got everything, he's got the next move in his head, and he's got that clinical finishing. But it would be a really interesting to see how he sort of manages in that environment. That's why, if I was advising him, I think even if he went to United, but then they decided to loan him out for a year at like a high level Europa League club or another Champions League club in a different country, that would be really interesting just to see him get his find his feet. By all means, he could be one of these guys who comes over and adapts straight away. But I think typically you've seen a lot of players maybe take a first step to Spain or Italy or the Netherlands or Portugal, for example. I think he's good enough to go in and make an impact at pretty much any top club. Whether he could be the main man at United straight away, I'd maybe have a few doubts doubts about that. As you said before, he's a long-term project, but he's not someone like Pelistri, for example, who you farm out on loan for 2 or 3 years and see if he comes good. He's a guy who needs to be involved at senior men's football at the top level straight away. So I think it's going to be a case of the Premier League wouldn't necessarily be my first choice of destination for him, but that's not to say that he wouldn't thrive. I just think, maybe he'd do better in Italy or something like that to begin with.
I think the loan game is really difficult for Premier League clubs because although it's a great idea to send these players abroad to get game time, it's like you've mentioned there, the aggression and the physicality of the Premier League literally is not replicated anywhere. Just have a look at Jadon Sancho and some of the stories that are coming out of him of sitting in the dressing room after games going, like, where's that game gone? I can't believe just how intense and how fast it is. And I think it's maybe very different for wingers than it is for strikers and number nines, because as a number 9, you're expecting each game to have a battle with a centre-back. Whereas a winger, you're looking to find space and be able to drive at players. So I think maybe for someone like Alvarez, he might actually take to Premier League like a duck to water, because his movement and his expectation of having a battle on his hands every game as a number 9 might actually play into his hands a little bit because of the position that he plays in. And ultimately with a striker as well, it only takes 3 or 4 games scoring goals to get your confidence up and being able to push forward, or 3 or 4 games not scoring goals for your confidence to drop and for you to worry about where you're at. It's then the hard work that gets put in around it. So I think it's really, really interesting, which is why I think if we sign him, I'd like him to be part of a big plan. I'd like him to be part of the plan that's like, okay, right, this is a system we're going to play. Greenwood's going to be in that system. Alvarez is going to be in that system, because we already know we're not getting Haaland. I'm putting that quoted text, right? So we're going for the 2 next best talents, young talents in football, potentially. And we're going to base our team around these 2 strikers and then move forward. So I think it's going to be quite interesting. And I'd like us to sporadically give him game time and sporadically push him forward and let him get used to the physicality, let him score some goals and drive on from there, learn from Cavani, learn from Ronaldo. That's if we do sign him. And it's a very big if, Tom, because where are these rumours coming from? Because the English press haven't exactly jumped on it. They're all from high tier and secondary tier South American football writers and journalists, and especially a lot of noise coming out of Argentina right now. So where do you put your finger on the noise coming from?
Yeah, so I mean, his agent, Hidalgo, is out in Europe at the moment, supposedly, listening to offers. I think it's all, if you read the reports in, the Argentinian dailies and things like that, it's all quite vague in terms of whether he's got meetings set up with different clubs and that kind of thing. You always wonder, is this a bit of a ploy to sort of drum up a bit of interest? Well, not, there's obviously interest from loads of different clubs. There's been plenty of Italian clubs like Inter, Milan, Juve who've come out to watch him. Bayer Leverkusen have been in contact with River as well. They've previously bought Palacios and Lucas Alario from River, so they've got a good relationship. And then obviously, Spanish teams like Sevilla, Atletico Madrid, even Barcelona as well have all been mentioned in the same breath as Alvarez. So I think that, his agent's there. He's probably talking to numerous clubs, to be honest. And obviously, if people know that United are interested, that's going to maybe speed things along if they want to get a deal done, because of, it's such a big name. They've got the power there to drop 20 million without too much worry. So yeah, I think it's hard to know how much is agent talk and how much is definitely being discussed. I mean, I'm sure United, with their scouting department, that they can't have not been scoping him out and checking him out, because he is a fantastic player and one of the best young under 21 players in the world right now. So he represents, a smart business move, because just by buying him, giving him some game time, at the very least, you're going to also sell him for more than you paid in the first place. Obviously, he's going to want to know that he's part of a project, that there's a clear route. I think, yeah, you're spot on in terms of, integrating him carefully in, because you don't want to just suddenly put all this weight and expectation on his shoulders to be the main man to get all the goals. You know, if you're sharing that out between Greenwood and obviously some of the more seasoned professionals out there, then that feels like a really good fit, especially if Martial and others going out the door. So he's where he's going to end up. You know, I have no idea. I think he will be in Europe, potentially even early, you know, but this transfer window, but 100% by next summer. It'd be interesting to see whether the clubs that are looking at him want to buy him, leave him at River for another 6 months. You know, let's say Fiorentina want to, they know they're going to sell Vlahovic, and then they've got their ready-made replacement coming in to sort of slot in as soon as he goes, or Dortmund with Haaland, or whoever. You know, there's lots of clubs who could see maybe one of their big name players, or they integrate them, give them 6 months as the understudy to one of the seasoned pros. So yeah, there's a lot of talk. None of it too firm right now. So whether he will go to United or not, you know, none of us know just yet. But I think he represents someone who's really exciting, and I think it's the type of signing that is a real positive for United if he does go there, because it feels like there would be a plan. There's some forward planning. He's, you know, I always kind of saw him as the type of signing that City might have made, in terms of one of those guys who's not necessarily the ready-made superstar just right now, but he just kind of flies in under the radar. You get him for 20 million, you know, you sell him for 40 or 50 if it doesn't work out, or he's, you know, the next superstar, and it looks like a masterstroke. So I think it's a real positive. You know, obviously I don't want to be comparing United and City too often on this show, but you know, if we take it on the positive, then, you know, it's definitely just being linked with him as one of the contenders, I think is a real positive, and signs that, you know, United are planning something a bit more long term.
Well, I think from what we know, his agent's definitely talking to clubs, and I think we can safely say one of those clubs probably is Manchester United, but as is Madrid, AC Milan, probably City as well, as agents do when they've got a player with a release clause to push him out onto the market and potentially away from Argentinian football. Obviously, the risk for Alvarez in staying in Argentinian football next year up to the World Cup is that if you don't have as good a season as this season, it doesn't look as great on paper. Plus, he'll be another year older, and a 22, nearly 23-year-old prospect isn't as fancy as a 21-year-old prospect. So he's got all these things going on at the moment. There's a lot of clubs interested in him. We wanted to do this show because the rumours are there. We wanted to talk about him. We wanted to get a bit of an insight, something to get excited about, something to think about. You know, how would Alvarez fit in at United? After you've heard all of this stuff from Tom, guys, get in the comments. Let us know. What do you think? Does a future strike partnership of Julian Alvarez and Mason Greenwood excite you? With then Amad Diallo and Sancho on the wings, maybe, or Rashford moving out to maybe learn his trade a little bit more out wide. And, you know, should this be the way United are going? We know Laird's going on loan now to Bournemouth to compete at a club at the top of the Championship instead of Swans who aren't as competitive in the middle of the standings. You know, could he be coming in at right back? You know, could then this be a very much more youthful United setup in the summer? And again, a hypothetical question. If Pochettino is the man coming in, an Argentine in Alvarez, an Argentine in Pochettino, them two moulding together, what an incredibly exciting partnership and movement forward that could be for United next season. Anyway, thoughts in the comment. There's a lot of hypothetical questions around it. I think the one thing that we are for sure about, though, Tom, Alvarez is going straight to the top, isn't he? He's looking like a fantastic talent.
Oh, yeah, he's absolutely catapulted himself from good prospect to one of the best young players in Argentina and certainly in South America. So yeah, he's wherever he ends up. Hopefully it's United, because I'd love to see him more in the Premier League. And you know, it's obviously great for the Argentinian national team. He's already part of that setup, and that's a side that's going from strength to strength as well. So yeah, he's definitely someone to keep an eye on, and yeah, he'd be an asset to any club that got him. So yeah, watch this space.
Fingers crossed. Thank you, Tom Robinson. Thank you for coming on, buddy. I really, really appreciate your time. You've been fantastic. Thank you for that. And it's been great talking to you about another exciting South American talent. Long may we be linked with these next generational talents, because I love chatting about them, especially when I've only seen these exciting compilations as well. So keep up your great work with all the writing that you're doing on these fantastic names. And fingers crossed, maybe a few more of them come to United and we get to see them in the flesh. So thank you, Tom. Thank you for that. Go and give Tom a follow on Twitter. Make sure you subscribe to All for United. Get your thoughts in the comments on the show on Alvarez, where he potentially fits in, and the potential of us getting him. For now, we're going to get out of here. We'll have more transfer specials and player insights this month as the rumour mill keeps ticking. It keeps moving. Bye for now. Stay safe, everyone. Thank you very much.